Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Lower Decks episode review discussion breakdowns. Of course, today we are going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 6, Terminal Provocations. So those of you who kind of follow my episode reviews week by week, you do know that episode 5 of Lower Decks season 1 was kind of just okay for me. I did really enjoy it. I thought it was very entertaining. It was definitely a different experience than what we've had so far within the series. This episode, episode 6, was another wild departure from kind of the norm of this series. You know, I feel like almost every episode now, things are kind of shaping up to be different kind of blends of ideas and different kinds of themes and tones and really just experiences overall, which is a benefit, I think, to the soft reset style of this serialized production of television, where each episode kind of feels like its own thing, but with the same characters. It's almost like an anthology show in some kind of weird ways, if that makes sense. I personally loved this episode. This is probably the one that I've watched the most already in the shortest amount of time, and the one that is really honestly my new favorite. And this was just great. The jokes were fantastic. The script was lean and perfect. We had Star Trek elements. We had really great moments with the senior bridge officers. We had literally some of the zaniest characters I've ever seen inside of this show before, and really inside of Star Trek altogether. Everything was great. I love the interaction between the Cerritos and the Marauders who were trying to scavenge for the garbage, the Starfleet garbage. All of that stuff was just so well done. The introduction and dismissal of the Fletcher character was perfectly seamlessly done, and I like the maturation of the relationship between Rutherford and Tendi. I like the whole situation going on between Boimler and Mariner and kind of their relationship kind of maturing in its own kind of friendship kind of way, and really just everything kind of associated with this episode. It was phenomenal. Definitely my favorite one, and I would be hard pressed to see any episode in the rest of this season beat out this one. I really loved this one. There are zero things that I disliked about it this week. I am going to cover some of the things that I absolutely super enjoyed and kind of just do a little breakdown of what the kind of standout moments for me were. But yeah, there's no things that I disliked about this episode. I honestly thought it was amazing. So first up, we got our cold open back, and it was fantastic. It didn't really necessarily have to do too much with what the main plot is of the entire episode, but we did get introduced to the Fletcher character inside of the cold open. What a genius way to kind of do that and kind of introduce this new character to us as the audience, where they're doing the weird, warp core, warp nacelle kind of sounds of all the different ships inside of Star Trek and stuff like that, and then of course, Ransom thinks that everyone's like possessed or something like that, specifically Boimler. So I like that. I'm so glad the cold open's back. So this episode has, again, that A, B, and C plot. And just like most of the episodes of this first season, they all kind of converge again towards the end. They all really impact each other in a lot of ways. And it's all great. And it all definitely directs right back into what it is that the bridge crew is doing. They're doing a really fantastic job with that by making sure that whatever the bridge crew is kind of doing, it really impacts what the lower decks crew is kind of doing. I had a bit of complaints about that, specifically like in, I want to say, the second episode where the Cerritos was just hanging out waiting for Boimler to drop off the Klingon ambassador, and I was a little kind of like confused as to what the Cerritos was doing. But honestly, in every other episode, it's very clear as to what the Cerritos is doing and kind of the context of the show and how that directly impacts what the lower decks crew is doing. And we had that here. We had our A, B, and C plot. The A plot was essentially Boimler, Mariner, and our new character of Fletcher, and our new old character of Fletcher, who's now gone. And then, of course, we had the, kind of expansion of the Rutherford-Tendi situation where he kind of brought her into holodeck to kind of get over her fear of spacewalking, but then that whole adventure kind of went sideways. And then, of course, we have the C-plot stuff that's happening with the senior bridge crew, which is these Marauders wanting to take this Starfleet salvage and, basically lay claim to it, but, of course, Cerritos is not having that. So those are our A, B, and C plots. So within the A-plot structure, basically what happens is we are introduced to an all-new character. And I don't know if they're going to start doing this more regularly within the show, but we're introduced to this character named Fletcher, who's apparently a friend of Boimler's. And he's kind of a weird guy. He's both cool and helpful, but also kind of an idiot and also kind of lazy, I guess. Essentially what happens is he lets Mariner and Boimler go to the choo-choo music festival, the Choo Choo Train Music Festival, which was this other weird kind of joke that was happening inside the episode, which we didn't even get to see. It was like a tertiary thing happening in the background, which was like, I wish we could see more of that. And so he lets them go to this while he tries to finish up their work. And then he decides to meld his mind with one of these, isolinear cores or something like that. That's, has to do with the shield repairs. And then it becomes sentient and starts consuming all knowledge that's, it can grab, and technology that it can grab and get a hold of. And it turns into this crazy monster thing that the, Lower Decks team, that Boimler and Mariner have to kind of get out of the ship, which, the whole reason... Again, this is all kind of connected, right? So this thing was impacting the shield's ability to repair. They needed the shields to repair because the Marauders were throwing garbage at the Cerritos, which is such a Cerritos thing to happen. And then while the garbage was being thrown to that, a lot of the systems were going out of haywire, which impacted the B-plot of Tendi and Rutherford's, holodeck program. So everything was kind of connected, and I like that. I like how at the end, when Boimler and Mariner had to get rid of that crazy sentient creature monster thing that became, this aggregative, of all this kind of technology it could grab, they ejected it into space, and then it crashed into the Marauder ship, effectively ending the crisis, which I thought was a really great way how it kind of started there, and then it kind of wrapped up there, kind of this big loop there. So I thought that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed that part. Another kind of thing that happened with the A-plot thing was, we got to meet up with the Delta Shift folks, and I love the rivalry here. They referenced it, I think, in the last episode, but this one we actually get to see some of the Delta Shift crew, and I like how they pulled open their uniforms and they were going to go to fisticuffs over if who stole the computer core thing or whatever it was, and I thought that was freaking hilarious. I really enjoyed that, and they were like, no, we didn't steal it. We were at the Choo Choo Train concert, and then they cut back to the Choo Choo Train concert. I thought that was great. So many great laughs during the A plot. But then, of course, we jump over to the B plot, which is the Rutherford Tendi situation. And honestly, I don't think I could have ever been prepared for what we experienced there. Badgie, obviously, if you're watching this, you've probably already seen the episode. Badgie was awesome. I loved Badgie. I thought the character, before it went crazy, was a perfect Starfleet embodiment of the little paperclip guy that hung out with Microsoft Word, and he was going to kind of help you out and do these weird things, and that he was super not helpful. And then, the fact that after the safety protocols were turned off inside of the holodeck, and then he immediately started to attack Rutherford after Rutherford had kicked him earlier because he was mad about that. That was so great. I really liked how it just turned into this crazy being, and it was almost like a cartoonish version of what happened with Moriarty in a lot of ways, where Moriarty uses its extreme intellect to kind of take over the Enterprise, so to speak, and kind of outwit the Enterprise crew, whereas because and that's a very good villain for the intellectual The Next Generation show, but Lower Decks is kind of this crazy, zany cartoon show, so their version of Moriarty is this crazy, zany cartoon character, and it just goes berserk, and I love it. I thought it was super funny. I thought all of its lines were super funny. The deadpan eyes and the constant smiling was super creepy, and I thought it was just really funny. I could understand maybe some people getting a little kind of like, I don't know, about how it was like ripping people apart on the holodeck, and there was kind of blood shooting everywhere and stuff like that. And this is where it's kind of right in that line again between that adult and kind of kid-like humor. Some of these episodes have a bit more kid-like, humor to it, and some of them have more adult-like humor to it, where this one was a little bit more mature in a lot of ways. I did not personally mind it. I think that if you're on episode 6 of Lower Decks and you're still getting upset about how the show is, damaging canon, or this isn't the way Starfleet officers would act or whatever, I feel like you probably are not at this point. I feel like you've probably given up around episode 2 or 3. So if you're at this point in the season, you've probably already embraced those concepts and that construct and what this show is about. So you're already kind of on board for these zany things. I think it was good of them to kind of put this character further back into the season, so that if they put it earlier in, I don't think people would have been fully on board at that point with this show and what the premises and how these characters and how this universe kind of works within the context of Lower Decks. So putting it later on in the second half of the season, I think, was a smart move, and I thought the character was very effective. And honestly, it got very emotional there when the character had to die, and he was like, Father, and talking to Rutherford as dad, and he kept calling him son, and then he had to snap his little robot neck, and then he just reappears again after the program gets reset. Very emotional. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a great moment. It was a great emotional moment, and then it kind of turned into this really kind of just fucked up moment there. I thought it was great. I loved it. So, of course, the C-plot situation with the crew and them trying to figure out what to do with the trash being thrown at it. Shax was crushing it the entire time. I thought he was like literally every line he had was friggin' great. This was kind of his pseudo episode to shine in some regards. I liked the interaction between the captain and the Marauders, where he just told her to go fuck you, basically, when she was like, you can't have this. And it was just a very, again, a very Lower Decks approach to these kinds of conversations that we've seen so many times inside of Star Trek. I thought it was great, super funny, a lot of quotable lines. I like the design of these creatures, these Marauder people. I don't know if we've ever seen them before. I didn't bother to look because I'm just being lazy today. I didn't bother to go back and check to see if we'd seen these particular beings before. The starship design looked very similar to some other things that we've seen in the past, but I don't know if we've actually seen these beings before. But yeah, I just thought it was great. I thought that the whole C plot was perfect. And again, I enjoyed how we understood what was contextually happening. We didn't necessarily need to spend every minute on the bridge, but we needed to understand, I feel like we need to understand a little bit about what's happening with the ship so that when we cut to the Lower Decks crew, we understand more about what's going on with them. So I'm glad that we got, again, that context, and it really elevates what's happening and the stakes that are going on with the Lower Decks team. So one of the other things that I really enjoyed was, of course, the awesome shout out to the USS Titan, which at this point is under the command of the not yet retired Captain Riker. I guess kind of like what happened at the end there was Mariner made it seem like our boy Fletcher had saved the day, so they went ahead and promoted him and transferred him off the Cerritos, which was essentially getting out of their hair and letting the Titan deal with him because they signed him to the Titan, and then he immediately got fired from that ship because he isn't that great of a Starfleet officer apparently. So yeah, so that was great. I did like them. I did appreciate the overall shout out of the Titan. Okay, so really that just kind of wraps up my overall feelings and kind of, high moments of the breakdown of the different plots. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode, specifically because we got a little bit more moving the needle forward with the situation with Rutherford and Tendi and seeing how that's going to develop. And I really enjoyed seeing Mariner and Boimler really working together. They drew good attention to it in this episode that when there's these other weird things happening, like with the Fletcher situation, they actually are really good at working together. Boimler and Mariner are really good at kind of figuring things out and working together and playing off each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I like the fact that we saw a lot of that in this episode, and I hope we continue to see more of that in the future episodes. I think that was kind of like the real strength of this episode, other than the jokes. Like, this was probably the funniest episode, in my opinion, so far. So the jokes kind of were the strongest element of it, and then, their relationship and kind of how it's kind of developing, not romantic relationship, but like their relationship as, coworkers. And I don't know if it'll be romantic later, but right now as coworkers, I like how it's developing. I like how it's becoming what it is. And I hope we get to kind of continue to see that moving forward in the show. All right, guys and gals, that does wrap up my episode 6 review. Again, I absolutely freaking love this episode. I could literally go through every single frame and sequence to talk about what it is that I loved. Badgie is the huge standout character for me in this episode. I absolutely love that character, and I just love this episode. If I went through everything, I'd literally be sitting here for like 2 hours going through frame by frame. I think me just telling you that I loved every part of it, just know that that's how I feel about this one. This was a great episode, phenomenal. And I'm honestly, after I'm done recording this and editing it together, I'm probably going to watch it again. So that should just tell you right there how much I appreciated it. All right, so why don't you tell me what you thought about this episode? Get your comments up down below. What did you think of Badgie? What did you think about the murdering going on? And what did you think about the development of some of the relationships that we've seen so far in this episode and Lower Decks overall? Get your comments up down below. And let me know also if you enjoyed this video by subscribing and liking it and giving it that good old upvotes. I would appreciate that. It really helps out the channel. We did just recently hit 20,000 subscribers, so let's go ahead and keep that number rising, I guess. And we'll see what we can get up to at some point in the next year or so. It'd be rather interesting. So yeah, throw up your stuff up down below and we'll go ahead and get the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!